Hello and welcome to the Cybersecurity and POPI Act webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 2.5 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Hello and welcome to the Cybersecurity and POPI Act webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 2.5 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Hello and welcome to the Cybersecurity and POPI Act webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 2.5 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Hello and welcome to the Cybersecurity and POPI Act webinar. While we wait for all the attendees to join, let us cover the housekeeping rules for this webinar. Today's webinar is scheduled to last 2.5 hours, including the question and answer section. All participants will be muted to enable the speakers to present without interruption. Questions submitted prior to an hour before the start of the webinar will be answered first during the question and answer section. Any additional questions can be submitted via the chat room during the webinar at any time. These will be answered if there is enough time after the pre-submitted questions. There will be a short 15-minute interval at 12:30. Please do not log out or leave the session during the interval period. The recording of this presentation will be provided approximately 72 hours after we conclude. The recording will only be available for a limited period. Hello everyone and welcome to the Cybersecurity and POPI Act webinar. Your host for this webinar is Liesl Erasmus, and she is the Creative and Content Director of Upskill Academy. We want to thank our guest speakers from the Information Regulator and Glyph Connect for joining us today. We are all looking forward to their presentations and the information they will be sharing with us today. Before I hand it over to Liesl to introduce the panel, we would like to take a short moment of your time to introduce you to Upskill Academy. Upskill Academy is the creators of simplified courses for sometimes complicated yet current, relevant, and mostly required learning for compliance with various laws. The aim is to quickly, easily, and affordably upskill your workforce with the relevant information required for compliance with regulatory matters that may have far-reaching and negative effects on your business. The internet is your classroom. Study anytime, anywhere on any smart device. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our training is a perfect solution with minimal disturbance yet maximum impact. Our courses are quick to complete, packed with all the needed information with graded questionnaires and a certificate of completion as proof of training and compliance. Companies are fully embracing e-learning and online learning platforms due to their simplicity of use. We offer the ability to monitor student performance and progress and offer completion of compliance certificates. Cost-effectively mitigate risk for your company. So, how does it work? Courses can be purchased separately or for as little as 100 Rand per month per employee. You can gain access to a constantly growing library of courses for all your employees. This means that your employees will be able to continuously learn various topics. Some of these topics include cybersecurity awareness training, POPI employee compliance training and ethics, fraud, bribery, and managing the risk training, and so much more. The best part, the library constantly grows. Need a course that is not available in our library? No problem, we will research and develop it for you and add it to our library for all our subscribers. If the course you need is company-specific, we can still research and develop it for you at a negotiated fee. The first step is to choose whether you want to purchase just the one course or subscribe to our library, which provides access without limits. Step 2 is to log into your profile and get started. All courses consist of modules with videos followed by short questionnaires. The system automatically saves your progress, so you can do the course over time. The system also has course compliance controls that require video completion to move on from one module to another. As soon as you've completed all the modules and passed the graded questionnaires, you will receive a certificate of completion. All certifications will remain on the Upskill Academy platform for future access if required. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our clients say it best. Here are just a few testimonials. Now that you know who we are, let's take a quick look at the courses we offer relating to today's topic.
My name is Liesl, and I would like to just quickly introduce our speakers of today. We first will be listening to Mr. Temba Mazibu, and he is the Senior Manager of IT Analysis at the Information Regulator. He is going to discuss the topic of POPI and cybersecurity and security topic that he's going to cover. Then after he speaks, we will have a short 15-minute interval. I am going to ask, as the video said, to please do not leave us during that time, as we will be back shortly after the interval. Then after that, we will be joined by Mr. Willem van Zyl, who is the director of Glyph Connect, and he will talk to us about cybersecurity hygiene. After that, I'm going to share a little bit of data protection against people, and then we will be opening up the platform to the question and answers. We are first going to cover or just answer the questions that were submitted prior to the session as part of the registration period. And after that, we will answer any questions that we have time available for in the chat. If we do not answer your question during the session, just type it in the chat. Our consultants will come back to you with the answer afterwards via email. Okay. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Langitemba Mazibu from the Information Regulator, and he's going to continue on. Thank you.
I'd like to greet everyone who's in attendance at this webinar on behalf of the Information Regulator. Today, I'll be discussing a topic about cybersecurity and POPI. Lisa, if you can assist me with screen sharing. It's a very important part of POPI in terms of Condition 7 that enforces or forces all public bodies, private bodies, and anyone processing personal information to have the appropriate security safeguards in place in order to protect the personal information of data subjects. So
you can now share, Mr. Mazibu.
Yes, I can see now. I'm able to share. Just bear with me a second. And yeah. Okay. Just for bandwidth purposes, I'm going to ask to turn off my video. Is that okay, Liesl, for while I do the presentation?
Yes, that is okay. Not a problem at all.
Okay. Okay. So, as Liesl said, I'm Langitemba Mazibu. I'm the Senior Manager for IT Analysis at the Regulator. And what we do at the Regulator and how it was established was in terms of our Constitution. And this is an organization that is established in terms of two parts of our Constitution, which is one, Section 32, which I'll start, which is the right of access to information. And the one that is important to our topic today, which is Section 14, the right to privacy and ergo, the protection of personal information of data subjects. The Information Regulator itself was established to ensure respect and to protect, enforce, and fulfill the right to privacy and right to access of information. Now, this is a very loaded statement, and it gives the regulator so much responsibility in terms of the general public out there and their right to know what is entailed in the Constitution and what kind of protections that they receive from our Constitution. Now, as our legislative mandate, the core functions in terms of POPI are, like I said, to provide education. This is to provide information to data subjects, so that they are able to know the rights they have according to POPI. Our EduCom section has been dealing with this and going out into every part of the country to actually deliver the message and tell people about POPIA and their rights as data subjects. We also monitor and enforce compliance to the conditions, as you will see later on in the presentation. There are 8 conditions that are prescribed by POPIA. This is the same for other popular privacy legislation that exist around the world, like in the European Union. There's the general data protection regulations that are in place. This is very similar to POPIA with a fundamental difference. POPIA not only protects data subjects who are, living flesh human beings, but the legislation we have in South Africa also protects juristic persons. This means when we talk about personal information of data subjects, we not only refer to the personal information of people, but also of the companies that are registered in the Republic and people who are in the Republic at any given time. So this is a very broad piece of legislation that tries to put out the message about the protection, the privacy enshrined in our section 14 of the Bill of Rights. So we also consult with interested parties, like today Upscale Academy has asked us to come and be part of this webinar. So thank you very much to them. And we also handle complaints from data subjects, So if you find that there has been any contravention of the 8 conditions regarding to your personal information, or you suspect such, we have a complaints process where you can go to our website, get a form and lodge a complaint. We also conduct research into various fields relating to privacy, and just to get a broad sense, because as a new body like the information regulator is, we have to get all our ducks in a row. And every time we get information from the public, we may not know everything that is out there. So we need to appraise ourselves, conduct research, and see what is happening out there, and so that we can be able to respond appropriately should any incidents occur or any complaints we get from the public. We also develop codes of conduct. Now, some institutions or sectors in the economy would come together and they say, okay, in terms of POPIA, we would like to develop a code of conduct that will govern our sector. I'm just going to throw out an example here. Maybe the health sector would say, this is a code of conduct for all medical practitioners, and this is how we are protecting the personal information that we have in our possession, and so on and so forth. Now, let's dive into the protection of personal information and the purposes of POPIA. Like I said, it gives effect to the constitutional right to privacy by safeguarding the personal information when processed by responsible parties subject to justifiable limitations. Now, I'd also like to say this act, in terms of saying we protect personal information, we should be able to say, yes, we protect the processing. We are not saying that people should not process personal information, not at all. But, in balancing this right to say, let's protect the personal information, we have to take into consideration the right to access to information as well. We have to take into account the conditions that we need to say there should be free flow of information within the Republic and across international borders. Now, I need to qualify the last part when I say across international borders, is these places where you transfer information to. Let's take a hosting company, for example. They might have servers in the Republic and might also make use of servers outside the country. I'm sorry. They may make use of servers outside the country in order to store such large amounts of data. But now these hosting companies need to ensure that the company where they are hosting these servers and the personal information of citizens have comparable, legislation to what we have in South Africa. You need to have some sort of data protection mechanisms that exist in that country that are comparable to POPI that we have in South Africa. Take, for instance, the European Union. They have the GDPR, but there are gray areas in terms of now saying we are also hosting personal information of companies in Europe. Now, Europe's GDPR doesn't make provisions for the protection of personal information of juristic persons. So how do we navigate that? So this legislation, in essence, let me just get back here, to continue, regulates the manner in which personal information may be processed. So these 8 conditions exist to know, so that we can have harmony with other international standards and how people are doing this in other countries, so that we can facilitate this, cross-border transfer of information in a safe way for data subjects who are reliant on the information regulator of South Africa to ensure that their personal information is protected by anyone who may be processing it. So we need to provide persons with rights and remedies, so everyone needs to know how they can then seek remedy should they find that any of their personal information may have leaked out, be lost, or sent to third parties without their consent. And, we need to establish voluntary and compulsory measures, including the establishment of a regulator, which we now have in South Africa, to ensure that there is respect for this act. Because a lot of times we see pieces of legislation and we, throw it away. This doesn't apply to me. I'm in a rural area. I'm a small business. Who's looking at me? But the problem is, at the end of the day, you are handling the personal information of data subjects, and you need to do that in a responsible way. So these are the role players in this. So a data subject, like I've been saying, is any person to whom information relates. This could be a person, or like I said, a company, a juristic person, a registered company in South Africa. So a responsible party is anyone, a public body, a private body, or a person, in their private capacity, who might be having a solitary business, who is handling personal information of data subjects. So they are a responsible party because the personal information that we're talking about would be under their control. An operator is anyone who, a responsible party may task with performing operations on personal information that the responsible party holds in their possession, So this may be in terms of a contract or mandate without coming under, direct authority of that party. So a competent person, in this case of POPI, refers to anyone who has the right to give consent on behalf of someone else, So this would be in respect of, personal information of a minor person or a child as it relates to POPI, because anyone under 18 cannot give consent to their personal information being processed. You would need to get that consent prior to processing that personal information from a competent person. So when we talk about personal information, we are relating to information that is identifiable of a living natural person or a juristic person. This includes, but is not limited to, all these you see on the screen right now. Your race, your gender, your sex, the pregnancy of a person is personal information, education, information, your medical information, whether you're vaccinated or not, that's your personal information. Your financial, criminal, employment history. Importantly, you have personal identifiers, your ID number, or any other, identifier that can be used to link to you should any of that information be aggregated with other data sources. So this is like a huge scope of what we call personal information that we are talking about that should be protected by the people who processing this personal information. So when we talk processing of personal information, it relates to, the collection, how you receive it, how you store this personal information, how you organize it in your databases, you collate it, and all other manners, how you disseminate and move this information from yourself to other parties that you may be working with. I can make an example of the banking industry collecting debt. They would need to transfer your personal information to a third party that does debt collection. So do they have consent to, have your personal information? That is one of the aspects that people need to know about. When people are calling you, they need to show that, yes, this is how I came across your personal information. We can also regard processing as, when you merge information, you may not have collected information that is way above what you should have, but maybe now you get a database from a third party, and all of a sudden you are able to aggregate this information and you put it together, and it suddenly tells a whole different story. And all this personal information you don't have consent to have. So this processing of personal information is a very broad topic, and so POPI will take precedence if you look at the bottom of other laws that relate to the processing of personal information. So we need to take cognizance of this act, and these are the 8 conditions of lawful processing that are important to be adhered to. So every company, when we say you adhere to what is in POPI, we mean that you are taking an active role in ensuring that you have aligned yourself and put in place all these 8 conditions in your organization. So these would include accountability, where we mean a responsible party who's taking account of, okay, this personal information is in my possession. So this also includes, the registration of information officers. Within an organization, the information officer will take accountability. Should anything happen, should enforcement start, should litigation begin, it is going to be the information officer who is, taking one for the team on this one. Then we have the second condition, which is processing limitations. You can only collect, the information for the purpose that you intend to use it for. And this is what the data subject knows, that you are collecting this information for a specific purpose, and you need to process it as such, and you go to further limitations where you say you cannot take the personal information that you've collected for one purpose and now use it for other things. You need to have a high quality of information, which must be complete, accurate, and not misleading or tell a different story about the data subject. We have to have openness in terms of maintaining and keeping documentation that relates to every processing operation that you do. The data subjects themselves must be aware of what personal information is collected when and how, and what information is in your possession. And should they ask for that, it needs to be provided to them within reasonable bounds. And then we have what we are here for today, which is the security safeguards. So the cybersecurity aspect will come in at about this point. I know it will touch on a lot of other things, but here, this is where, we establish the appropriate security measures and controls to actually ensure that personal information is protected, from loss, damage, theft, and all those things. And lastly, the eighth condition is we have to ensure that the data subject participates in everything that has to do with their personal information. If they request corrections, anything like that, if they want access to their personal information, you have to ensure that they are participating in everything that you're doing. If you choose to do further processing, you have to make the data subject a participant in that and ensure that they also know what you're doing in terms of further processing of their personal. So when we apply the eight conditions, all public and private bodies must put in place systems and processes to ensure that the compliance with the eight conditions. These include knowing the kind of personal information that you hold, checking the processes that are used to process this information, the information in your possession. And it's a very broad definition of processing, as you saw earlier, and these include collection, recording, your storage, and moving the personal information out of your possession to other parties. So you have to know the persons who have access to the personal information. These are access control, and ensure that appropriate security controls are in place to protect integrity and confidentiality. Now, I'd like to stick a bit, integrity of information just means that it is the same as when I left it. That it means that whatever the data subject entered into a web form and was stored into your database is the same as they have entered it, and no one has gained access to your system to make changes to that information without authorization. So that's what we mean when we say integrity. And confidentiality is where I'm keeping information and no one else can view this information. You can put measures in place like encryption to ensure that no one is able to read this information who is not authorized to do so. The responsible parties must also put in place compliance measures. We have to get people, even from external parties, to come and assess what you have in terms of your security. And you need to have your people, your operators, well trained in terms of POPI. Now, in organizations may be so big that one information officer or the deputy information officer cannot keep track of every piece of information that is being collected. So you need to have POPI champions in each of your divisions or departments to ensure that someone is handling all the required measures that relate to protection of personal information in that division. So this ensures a company-wide bird's eye view of all the personal information that is kept and the safeguards that are in place to protect each of the categories of information that you have. So the security safeguards, when we look at this condition 7 of in section 19 of POPI, is a responsible party, must secure the integrity and confidentiality of personal information in its possession or under its control by taking appropriate, reasonable, technical, and organizational measures to prevent loss, damage, or unauthorized destruction of personal information. Now, the first part of this, I would say you just need to know yourself. You identify all the personal information that is under your control. Assess the risk attached to each of those pieces of personal information. Identify who may try, who may want to have access to this personal information. How valuable is the information that you have in your possession, And at that point, then you may be able to say, okay, now this is the PI that I have at risk, and these are the security measures that I need to put in place as controls, you know. So examples of controls that people put in place, and I would like to say at this point, the regulator itself is not giving advice on what parties must do. We are merely saying these are ways in which you can put in place minimum safety and security safeguards to ensure protection of personal information. And because this is enshrined in the Act as well, it means that should these appropriate safeguards not be in place, as you will see later, you may be in line, to paying a fine or a term of imprisonment. And I think, let me move on to say, people put in place these kind of controls, preventative controls, detective. So preventative controls would be your antiviruses and whatever antivirus people put in place. And an antivirus basically does this. It collects all virus definitions that are new and it puts them all in one place and does scans, on your computer to check if any of your files match what they have in terms of virus definitions. Now, so whoever is the antivirus proprietor that you choose will have a similar way, and that similar way would also mean that they would have this or that added control on their antivirus, like spam scanning and application scanning and stuff like that. And then you have detective controls. These would be your intrusion detection systems, where you see if there are any illegal attempts to get into your system. People also employ controls, and one of the most important controls are people. Now, we may know that the cyber world is full of really ugly threats that we may face on a daily basis. But if we put in place controls, we may not stop all forms of attacks. But if people know, if the people in the organization are trained, not only in terms of POPI, but in terms of safe security habits that they need to have in order to protect themselves, not only in the workplace, but in their private lives. So that is how a habit forms. I would like to make an analogy where someone starts a farm. And in starting that farm, you put a fence around it. And in putting that fence around it, you now put a padlock on the chain at the gate, but you use the same key for the padlock as you do for the front door, as you do for the security gate, and right up until you get to the safe where you use the same key. Now, it may give the illusion of protection, but really, if someone compromises one part, they've literally compromised your whole system. So we need to put in place controls that are built into the minds of people. So people need to secure their passwords, knowing that strong passwords are a very good control. Knowing that if I get an email that promises 395 trillion, that I should immediately know that there is something wrong and I may want to delete that as soon as possible. That will be part of our next slides when we talk about phishing. We also need to make sure that responsible parties are monitoring, just as the regulator will do, that responsible parties are monitoring what is happening in their cybersecurity landscape. Now, someone, I think one of the books I've read describes cybersecurity as being the ongoing application of best practices intended to ensure and preserve confidentiality, integrity, and availability of digital information, as well as the safety of people and environments. Now, we constantly you have to constantly measure the resilience of the controls that you have put in place. Are they doing the job that you have put them in place to do? You know, have we had any attacks? Getting in once in a while vulnerability scanners from penetration testers who can make sure that there are no unknown vulnerabilities on your system. And also very important is this, you have to verify if any of the measures you've put in place are actually working. Now, some companies will put in place, you know, your ISO 27000 series or your NIST framework or COVID. You have to get external parties to come in to assess whether the frameworks you've put in place are actually working for you. Have you put them in place in the right way? Are you protecting the right assets? You know, and we come to the next part in monitoring is monitoring the environment around you, which is threat intelligence. Threat intelligence helps you in terms of getting information on some aspects of cybersecurity that you literally cannot do anything about. If there is a 0-day vulnerability that someone discovers, they are likely the only person who knows about it. And as they probably start the attack and it goes out, some security people out there who are constantly monitoring the environment may discover this 0-day and will put it out there so that people who have not yet been affected can protect against the vulnerability. Of course, when the moment 0 days are realized, the proprietor of the software would put in place or send out a patch to make sure that the vulnerability is taken care of. Of course, we know how we often just turn off that update. You know, once it pops up, you think about how much data you're going to lose. But it's important to run every update that comes your way because it may save your system. Another way that threat intelligence helps us is to discover new ransomware attacks that may be out there. You know, you get to be privy to what is coming your way and educate your staff, you know, about what they must look out for in terms of ransomware. Because remember, a lot of ransomware is delivered through phishing attacks, you know, and phishing attacks themselves, coming to social engineering, are not isolated incidents. No one does a phishing attack just to say, hey, I got in. It's usually part of an elaborate scheme to get more information than the low-level employee who might have been phished will give. This may be attack. This may be part of an attack that goes towards, getting a big fish from the company. So I start out small, gather the information, get into organization, be able to have access to the, your Outlook, and be able to send mails internally. This is even before I've started any form of malicious attack, which of course this is also malicious. But before that even happens, it will probably happen a month or two later, but the person had already infiltrated your system. So it also becomes very important to ensure that administrator rights on computers are kept to administrator level only. Anyone who's using a computer, even your own computer, you set up a user account and get out of the administrator account and use your own user account so that every time you need to install something, you need to enter a password, okay? So there are also attacks that are in progress that you might catch through threat intelligence. And, social engineering is always a big one where people may threaten you with something that is ongoing that you need to be aware of. But now these could be malicious actors, playing on your vulnerability and on your willingness to, help. So you need to ask questions to people. You need to ask them questions. You need to satisfy yourself. Ask them questions that may, no one else could know the answer to within your organization. Verify physically, not only picking up the phone and calling the next person to verify. take a walk to that department and ask the person physically if this is sensitive information that is being requested over the phone through a phishing attack. You can also keep yourself abreast on what is happening out there by, visiting sites like Looking Glass and Alien Vault. On the next slide, I have what a moment in Looking Glass might look like. I took the screenshot this morning. As you can see right there, it started at 10:06 and right at 10:07. So it's a live system that keeps you updated on, the number of infections per second, what attacks are currently happening, what botnets are out there. Botnets are, a system. It used to be just a system of infected machines that, people are using processing power of. But it's gotten rather huge because of the introduction of IoT devices onto our networks. These devices are largely not secured by anything and can be hacked and can be used to, send distributed denial of service attacks. And this is also a list of countries. This is just a few of them where attacks are currently happening. So in addition to POPI, I'm not going to dwell on this. We also have a Cyber Crimes Act in South Africa that came into some sections of it came into effect in December last year. It prescribes sentences for unlawful access. So if you have personal information in your possession that you cannot account for, that is unlawful access to the personal information of a data subject. You have no written consent, and this is a violation of POPI as well. You can call it inadvertent criminality. I may call it ignorance, and that is a criminal offense. And we come to what we've seen: sharing of intimate images. This is dissemination of personal information that is in your possession. You transfer this to third parties without this written consent of other people, and this is a crime and is, enshrined in the Cyber Crimes Act and has prescribed sentences for. Now, so to support the implementation of POPI, the regulator has or is in the process of developing guidelines and guidance notes to assist the public, to assist SMMEs and other responsible parties in understanding POPI, how to get around what is in the Act. So there are guidelines on development of codes of conduct. As you can see, that there are guidance notes on information officers and deputy information officers and how those registrations happen. There are guidance notes on prior authorization and how that is done. So there's a couple of guidance notes that are out there on processing of personal information and of processing personal information of children. There are also guidelines that are in the pipeline, like the guidance note on appropriate technical and organizational measures that people can put in place to protect their personal information. So who are information officers? So it's appropriate that information officers in organizations are the top brass. This needs to be someone who can give direction to the organization as a whole and will be listened to and can command respect within the organization in order for people to respect the governance. So the president, in the presidency, for example, the director general should be the person who is such an information officer. As you can see, in all of the municipalities have municipal managers, and that would be the person who is the information officer there. Public institutions have CEOs, and that is the appropriate information officer there. Of course, you may also elect a deputy information officer, but that also needs to be someone within your executive who does command a higher level of respect within the organization. So these are the few duties and responsibilities of an information officer. We need to encourage compliance to the conditions of lawful processing, ensure that there are safeguards in place. You deal with requests made to the body. You working with the regulator in terms of investigations. and conducted pursuant to Chapter 6, which is prior authorizations, ensure compliance by the body with the provisions of POPI, and ensure compliance framework is developed by responsible parties. These are the enforcement powers of the regulator. The regulator has an enforcement committee, and pretty soon we'll start seeing consequences for contraventions to protection of personal information of data subjects. These are the offenses that are listed in POPI, but are by no ways limited to this. Of course, you also have the Cyber Crimes Act working on its own, but also prescribing crimes for contraventions to POPI. Any person may submit a complaint to the regulator. We encourage people who feel aggrieved or who feel that may have been, illegal processing of their personal information to contact the regulator, test it out, see what comes out of the process. Responsible parties as well may submit complaints to the regulator if they feel any adjudication was not properly handled, or complaints about investigation and so forth. So there are several remedies. A data subject of the regulator, at the request of a data subject, may institute civil action for damages in a court, having jurisdiction against a responsible party for interference with the protection of personal information of a data subject, referred to in Section 73 of POPI. Whether this is the intent or is negligence, or on the part of the responsible party, it doesn't matter. But we have to say that should anything happen to the personal information, it is the data subject who is at disadvantage at the end of the day. So in terms of offenses, and penalties and administrative fines that are prescribed, so these can go up to 10 years in prison, and up to 10 million rand in administrative fines, and these are all in the act. And the most important is losing your reputation because you didn't put in the appropriate measures to guard against the theft or loss of information. These also include something I may have omitted, in looking internally as well and developing a culture within your organization of understanding the organization's duty towards the Constitution, understanding that you have a role to organization in protecting the personal information that you have in your possession. This same personal information you may be using to make, you have to respect that. You have to also respect the data subjects who this personal information belongs to. So, regulator, we commit to providing development information, educating the public about their constitutional rights, as we have started doing. We need to empower SMMEs to be POPI compliant. These are the same companies that often neglect regulation. It can't be the same as big companies who have regulatory departments who handle every single piece of legislation that comes. With SMMEs, some may not even know about POPI, and they need to be made aware of such a law and how it could benefit them as well. Because remember, the conditions prescribed here are also to the advantage of the responsible party, putting in place appropriate security safeguards can also protect your own intellectual property. That's not what we're talking about, but these security measures are good for you too. And in conclusion, the regulator has no intention to stop processing of personal information. All we do is to encourage lawful processing, ensuring that the personal information and effective access to the information is, people have access to the information that they require and their personal information is protected. We also commit to conducting stakeholder engagements and education, an integral part to ensure the interpretation of the two laws by responsible parties and for citizens to realize their rights. Thank you very much. That is my presentation today. I saved 4 minutes for you, Lizelle. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Themba. It was really an informative session, and a lot of information that I think our attendees will really take value in. Okay, everybody, we are now going to just move over to a 15-minute interval. When we come back, I'll introduce you to Willem van Zyl of Glyph Connect, and he will discuss cybersecurity hygiene with you. If you do have any questions for Mr. Mazibu, you are welcome to start posting them in the chat section during the 15-minute interval. We are first going to discuss the questions or answer the questions that were submitted during registration. But if you have any specific questions after the presentation, then please, you can enter them in the chat and we'll add them to the list. Okay, and then we'll take a short break and we'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cybersecurity and POPI Act webinar. Your host for this webinar is Liesl Erasmus, and she is the Creative and Content Director of Upskill Academy. We want to thank our guest speakers from the Information Regulator and Glyph Connect for joining us today. We are all looking forward to their presentations and the information they will be sharing with us today. Before I hand it over to Liesl to introduce the panel, we would like to take a short moment of your time to introduce you to Upskill Academy. Upskill Academy is the creators of simplified courses for sometimes complicated yet current, relevant, and mostly required learning for compliance with various laws. The aim is to quickly, easily, and affordably upskill your workforce with the relevant information required for compliance with regulatory matters that may have far-reaching and negative effects on your business. The internet is your classroom. Study anytime, anywhere on any smart device. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our training is a perfect solution with minimal disturbance yet maximum impact. Our courses are quick to complete, packed with all the needed information with graded questionnaires and a certificate of completion as proof of training and compliance. Companies are fully embracing e-learning and online learning platforms due to their simplicity of use. We offer the ability to monitor student performance and progress and offer completion of compliance certificates. Cost-effectively mitigate risk for your company. So, how does it work? Courses can be purchased separately or for as little as 100 Rand per month per employee. You can gain access to a constantly growing library of courses for all your employees. This means that your employees will be able to continuously learn various topics. Some of these topics include cybersecurity awareness training, POPI employee compliance training and ethics, fraud, bribery, and managing the risk training, and so much more. The best part, the library constantly grows. Need a course that is not available in our library? No problem, we will research and develop it for you and add it to our library for all our subscribers. If the course you need is company-specific, we can still research and develop it for you at a negotiated fee. The first step is to choose whether you want to purchase just the one course or subscribe to our library, which provides access without limits. Step 2 is to log into your profile and get started. All courses consist of modules with videos followed by short questionnaires. The system automatically saves your progress, so you can do the course over time. The system also has course compliance controls that require video completion to move on from one module to another. As soon as you've completed all the modules and passed the graded questionnaires, you will receive a certificate of completion. All certifications will remain on the Upskill Academy platform for future access if required. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our clients say it best. Here are just a few testimonials. Now that you know who we are, let's take a quick look at the courses we offer relating to today's topic. Hello everyone and welcome to the CyberSecurity and POPI Act webinar. Your host for this webinar is Liesl Erasmus, and she is the Creative and Content Director of Upskill Academy. We want to thank our guest speakers from the Information Regulator and Glyph Connect for joining us today. We are all looking forward to their presentations and the information they will be sharing with us today. Before I hand it over to Liesl to introduce the panel, we would like to take a short moment of your time to introduce you to Upskill Academy. Upskill Academy is the creators of simplified courses for sometimes complicated yet current, relevant, and mostly required learning for compliance with various laws. The aim is to quickly, easily, and affordably upskill your workforce with the relevant information required for compliance with regulatory matters that may have far-reaching and negative effects on your business. The internet is your classroom. Study anytime, anywhere on any smart device. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our training is a perfect solution with minimal disturbance yet maximum impact. Our courses are quick to complete, packed with all the needed information with graded questionnaires and a certificate of completion as proof of training and compliance. Companies are fully embracing e-learning and online learning platforms due to their simplicity of use. We offer the ability to monitor student performance and progress and offer completion of compliance certificates. Cost-effectively mitigate risk for your company. So, how does it work? Courses can be purchased separately or for as little as 100 Rand per month per employee. You can gain access to a constantly growing library of courses for all your employees. This means that your employees will be able to continuously learn various topics. Some of these topics include cybersecurity awareness training, POPI employee compliance training and ethics, fraud, bribery, and managing the risk training, and so much more. The best part, the library constantly grows. Need a course that is not available in our library? No problem, we will research and develop it for you and add it to our library for all our subscribers. If the course you need is company-specific, we can still research and develop it for you at a negotiated fee. The first step is to choose whether you want to purchase just the one course or subscribe to our library, which provides access without limits. Step 2 is to log into your profile and get started. All courses consist of modules with videos followed by short questionnaires. The system automatically saves your progress, so you can do the course over time. The system also has course compliance controls that require video completion to move on from one module to another. As soon as you've completed all the modules and passed the graded questionnaires, you will receive a certificate of completion. All certifications will remain on the Upskill Academy platform for future access if required. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our clients say it best. Here are just a few testimonials. Now that you know who we are, let's take a quick look at the courses we offer relating to today's topic. Hello everyone and welcome to the Cybersecurity and POPI Act webinar. Your host for this webinar is Liesel Erasmus, and she is the Creative and Content Director of Upskill Academy. We want to thank our guest speakers from the Information Regulator and Glyph Connect for joining us today. We are all looking forward to their presentations and the information they will be sharing with us today. Before I hand it over to Liesel to introduce the panel, we would like to take a short moment of your time to introduce you to Upskill Academy. Upskill Academy is the creators of simplified courses for sometimes complicated yet current, relevant, and mostly required learning for compliance with various laws. The aim is to quickly, easily, and affordably upskill your workforce with the relevant information required for compliance with regulatory matters that may have far-reaching and negative effects on your business. The internet is your classroom. Study anytime, anywhere on any smart device. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our training is a perfect solution with minimal disturbance yet maximum impact. Our courses are quick to complete, packed with all the needed information with graded questionnaires and a certificate of completion as proof of training and compliance. Companies are fully embracing e-learning and online learning platforms due to their simplicity of use. We offer the ability to monitor student performance and progress and offer completion of compliance certificates. Cost-effectively mitigate risk for your company. So, how does it work? Courses can be purchased separately, or for as little as 100 Rand per month per employee, you can gain access to a constantly growing library of courses for all your employees. This means that your employees will be able to continuously learn various topics. Some of these topics include cybersecurity awareness training, POPI employee compliance training and ethics, fraud, bribery, and managing the risk training, and so much more. The best part, the library constantly grows. Need a course that is not available in our library? No problem, we will research and develop it for you and add it to our library for all our subscribers. If the course you need is company specific, we can still research and develop it for you at a negotiated fee. The first step is to choose whether you want to purchase just the one course or subscribe to our library, which provides access without limits. Step 2 is to log into your profile and get started. All courses consist of modules with videos followed by short questionnaires. The system automatically saves your progress, so you can do the course over time. The system also has course compliance controls that require video completion to move on from one module to another. As soon as you've completed all the modules and passed the graded questionnaires, you will receive a certificate of completion. All certifications will remain on the Upskill Academy platform for future access if required. Train, verify, certify in 3 easy steps. Our clients say it best. Here are just a few testimonials. Now that you know who we are, let's take a quick look at the courses we offer relating to today's topic. The session will start again shortly. During the question and answer session at the end, we will first focus on the questions we received during registration. You are also welcome to send questions in the chat. We will try to answer as many as possible. If your question is not answered, you are welcome to contact us via email or telephonically. We are looking forward to hearing from all of you. Enjoy the remainder of the session.
Hi, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to immediately hand it over to Willem van Zyl, the director of Glyph Connect. Willem, you can take it from here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Liesel. My sound's good. Video looks good. Before we go on, let's just set the stage here a little bit. If you are on a desktop or laptop and you're using the Zoom application, there's a button at the top right that says View. You're welcome to set that to Speaker View. Then you'll get a clear picture of me as I go through the slideshow. So yeah, you're more than welcome to do that, and then set it back to gallery again afterwards. Let me get my screen shared here. There we go. So we can get going. Right, so as Liesel said, my name is Willem van Zyl. I'm the director of Glyph Connect. We do websites, digital transformation, and SEO services. And it's an immense privilege to be able to speak to you today. Much Themba for your session. It's just a great, giant overview of where we are with POPI Act and how it affects our businesses. And then to each of you, I say, congratulations on being here, taking the time out to care enough about your clients and their personal information, but also to care enough about your business. That type of attitude in the long run leads to growth. You're protecting your business from risk, and you are putting seeds in the ground that will lead to greater harvests in the future. So yeah, it's really great to have you here. What I'm going to try and do today is be extremely practical. So Themba was looking at sort of the overarching consequences or implications of POPI. I'm going to be very practical and take some specific examples of ways that we can improve your safety and security in the organization by you individually doing just a couple of things. So obviously, this is a really big field, and these also mentioned, and in the video you would have seen that there's an entire course from Upskill Academy. You're welcome to check that out. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of those points as we go through this. So what's the setting? Why do we need this in the first place? Just a little bit of background. Massive industry. Okay, global cybercrime is a giant industry, and you look at those numbers, and it's difficult to fathom, to say, okay, well, what am I supposed to do about this? Well, let's just break it down a little bit. Let's look at practically how does this affect me, and the reason why that giant industry and those big numbers affect me is. You'll see that little graph there that says 2 and 3 businesses. You're welcome to read that one. It does affect businesses that go through a serious cybercrime incident do see an impact on their operating capacity. So that's something to take note of. This graph that I find very interesting is you'll see that huge percentage of attacks still happen via email. That's why I'm so passionate about. And because if you empower your people, you are actually doing the most valuable thing you can be doing for your business in terms of. So that's something that we're going to be looking at just a little bit as well. The key concept that I want to leave you with today is this: user data equals responsibility. Right? If you make this a central theme inside your business, you will probably start making better decisions. And a lot of these things will start to feel a lot more natural, but user data equals responsibility. The problem with us as people is we only tend to do what benefits us in the moment. That's just the way we're wired. So I've got an easy way for you to think about this. How am I going to remember that user data equals responsibility? Just think of user data as money. It's money. You wouldn't let it lie on the counter at work. You wouldn't throw it around in the street. You wouldn't just chuck it in the trash. So if you can think about user data as money, you'll start to feel that responsibility upon your shoulders. And if you look at this graphic that we've got here, where are some of the areas in which we could potentially leak user data or this money out into the wild? And I've just listed a few websites, devices. So that would be like your laptop or your cell phone. Culture, I'm going to speak a little bit about that. That culture inside the organization. Email, waste. I will say there that unless you are being targeted with corporate espionage or your government agency, you probably don't need to run out and buy a shredder just yet, but it is an area in which we could leak personal information. And then marketing, which is something that a lot of schools, interestingly, ran into a couple of years ago with the Child Act, where they were doing marketing for their school, but they were actually leaking personal information, which was something that they had to make some changes on. So out of this whole sea of different ways that you could be leaking information, I'm going to focus on 4 of them, which is going to be the website, the device, culture, and email. And I'm going to take specific examples in each of those 4 of how this could happen and then how we could prevent it in the future. Right. What are my examples going to be? Well, we're going to look at website management specifically. We're going to look at password managers. So if we just take a step back here in the devices department, we're going to look at password managers. In our culture area, we're going to look at video conferencing software. And in the email department, we're going to look at how to spot a scam, which is something that Themba mentioned. I'm just going to show a couple of more practical examples. So now we've moved on from user data is a responsibility to user data is my responsibility. And I hope that if you leave here today and you only implement one of these 4 things, you would have already made an improvement in your company, your business, or your organization as a whole. So that day, and I hope that you're going to join me on the ride. We're going to start with our video conferencing software. Right, let's take a moment to talk about conferencing software. Exploded at the beginning of 2020 with the lockdowns that came with the international pandemic. There are lots of options available and we're using today, for instance, the Zoom. We've got Google Meet, you've got Teams. I think Skype's still doing around, 3CX is out there, a lot of different platforms. But there's some principles in there that, well, what does this have to do with user data? Well, let's have a look at the risks. A couple of things that we've seen over the last 2 years. People gain access to meetings where they're not supposed to be. Imagine this was an internal meeting. There's way too many people for us to know whether everyone that is here should actually be here. And if we were discussing information, maybe even company information that should stay internal, someone could log in, camera turned off, have their name renamed, and they could get all the information from here today. Right. Just an example of that, you might not have known, but this actually did happen here, both here in South Africa and in the UK, where we had cabinets and complete strangers logged into the national cabinet meeting. Then one other thing that we have also seen is impersonating people in meetings. So this would be more specific, where someone is pretending to be someone else to damage their reputation or to gain some sort of information or to use it as a platform towards other forms of attack. Post links in chat. We're going to talk more about links in a little while later, but obviously we have a chat function. And if you trust the name that's posting that link, it's a very easy place for someone just to click on a link. What can we do from our side when we have to counter some of these actions that could happen? Well, a couple of very practical things. And these are sort of general. You will find these in different pieces of technology. The tip I can give you is take some time to get to know your video conferencing software. If you are hosting these meetings or you're setting up meetings with fellow colleagues or with clients, just take a few minutes today, later in this week, and get to know the software a little bit. Go on YouTube, Google how to run a safe Zoom meeting, what some of the tips that are out there. But don't just assume that you know how to do it. A great example of this is, when we used to go from maps. I don't know who remembers maps in books. We used to take out the map book and then see where we're supposed to go and then map out our route that we're going to follow. We were prepared if we were going to go somewhere. Now, I'm typing in my destination in Google Maps when I'm halfway there. So the technology has made it really easy for us to do certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's really good. So yes, you can fire up a video conferencing software and you can run with it, and that's great. But if you spend a few minutes getting to know it really well, you could run much safer and higher quality meetings. A couple of examples for those would be using your waiting room features. That means that you can control who comes into the room and you can vet them at that point. Another example is to have a room manager like we have here today, someone that can keep an eye on what's happening with the room while the presenter is presenting. Another example would be to restrict their abilities. So don't give everyone in your conference or online meeting the ability to share their screen, for instance, or to turn on their camera. Make sure you know what the rights they're supposed to have and set it. And it's not tricky once you've done it once. And then the last one is password protect your meetings, which is always good. That just means that someone couldn't access the link and get into your meeting. So that's just a couple of quick tips. If you're running online meetings, take a moment, get to know your software, and make sure you set up those settings. YouTube's your friend. We're also welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions about this. Right, I'm gonna jump from that one. That was just a quick little tip. If you're running online, jump from that one into my password manager one, which has to do with devices. So in my business, no one is allowed to get up from their computer or put down their phone if it isn't locked. That is a policy. It's even a procedure. There's a procedure. You lock your phone. When you come back, this is how you unlock it. That's just in place to make sure that someone walking by couldn't gain access to something they're not supposed to have. So you can address a lot of these issues by putting policies and procedures, but you need buy-in from your people. And password managers is another example of that. Whenever I talk to companies about password managers, they just see the schlep. They just see the work go into it and, oh, it's one more thing we have to manage. But if you see the value of it and you get buy-in from your people, it's another one of those things where it's a small action, couple of seconds, you get over that mental barrier and you realize the value of protecting your business and your customers' data. So let's jump into that. What are password managers? So password managers simply says that you only have to remember one really good password, and that unlocks the vault where you store all your other passwords. Why is that important? Well, you need to have unique, difficult, long passwords for every single login that you use that is available on the internet, even say on your device's intranet. If you're reusing passwords, if any website you've used it on gets hacked, which isn't even your fault, I can just go and Google your email address and type in your password. I haven't hacked you. I just typed in your username and password. As far as the system knows, I'm you, because some site was hacked and the passwords were published. So reusing passwords is out. Any passwords under 8 characters, your desktop computer can guess that password now. It's become trivial. That's not even talking about the supercomputers and the botnets that Themba was speaking about earlier. So now we need to remember long passwords. And guess what? As humans, we are really terrible at remembering long passwords, long difficult passwords. So we do reuse them. Or we use personally identifiable information, which is also terrible, because eventually that's going to get leaked in some sort of a social setting. So what's great about a password manager is you remember one difficult password. I don't know my passwords anymore for all my logins. I checked the other day, I have 1,732 logins for all the client websites and email addresses. I don't know a single one of them. The vault knows them. I just have to unlock my vault. And what's great about that is it also gives your IT department an ability to administrate some of these functions. So I thought I'd just throw a couple of examples up there. If you're going to go out checking some of these out today, this is definitely something you can check out personally or even in your company. If you're going to check it out personally, I would advise looking at something like Bitwarden. It's free, it's open source, it's not going to cost you anything. It's an app installed on your phone, and it is a plugin you install on your browser, and you can begin to play around with it and see, hey, how does this actually work? You type in your password, it generates passwords for new logins. If you're going to use it in a company, I would definitely advise looking at something like 1Password, which has got great sharing abilities. So for instance, we have a vault for the IT department, the vault for the finance department, the vault for the web department, so that the finance department can share passwords with one another that they don't even know, but they just need to be able to access it without giving my access to our accounting platform, which is always great. So those would be some examples I would really encourage you to look at. Play around with it, see if you can get the hang. If you have something to ask about, say to your IT guy, hey, why are we not using a password manager in our organization? And at least open up that conversation. Right, let's jump over. I'm going a bit quick, but we're about halfway through our time, and I want to make sure that it doesn't catch up to us. So password manager's done, video conferencing done. This one is looking at the space of emails, how to spot a scam. So there are a lot of technology that can be put in place by your IT department or outsourced IT partner that is protect you. But ultimately, if you are really smart and really clever with regards to spotting scams, you will be more efficient than the best software out there that can protect you. So I'm hoping to turn you into a superhero here, give you a new power that you might not have had before, and then spot a scam just in a couple of quick ways. So let's get into that. There are lots of different types of scams. They come through many different mediums. They come through email, very popular these days for scams, social media, phone scams, telephone calls, and SMS scams. And how are you supposed to protect yourself if you don't become an expert in all of those? And who has the time to become an expert in IT security? Well, I'm going to give you a very simple recipe. That's sort of like it's a little quick guide. You can use this as a compass for every interaction you have online. Heck, you could use this as a compass for real world interactions as well. But I want you to ask yourself 2 critical questions whenever you are interacting with someone online. Who initiated contact? Okay. First question, who initiated contact? And you have to be very awake on this one, because sometimes they created the context and you feel like you made first contact, but you have to really think about it. Who initiated first contact? Did they send me an email, or did I send them an email? Did they call me, or did I send them a WhatsApp, or did they contact me? Very important. Second question, are they asking me for something? Time, money, some sort of action or information? Are they asking me for one of those things? And if your answer to the first one is yes, they initiated contact, and your answer to any one of those at number 2 is yes, I would advise you to stop immediately and verify. Temba mentioned this as well. Pick up the phone, call that client before you pay that invoice. Speak to your line manager, speak to the appropriate people. Make sure and verify, because there is no way you can trust that interaction. If you didn't initiate it and they're asking something of you, why are you trusting them? You literally can't be sure of who you are dealing with. So this would be a really good, just a way. When I get these WhatsApp messages, I always ask these questions. When I get emails, before I even read what they say, I ask myself these questions. When I get called by companies, verify my ID number, I go, I'm sorry, I can't do that. You need to improve your processes, because I'm not going to give you my personal information over the phone. You initiated contact and you're asking me for. So I really hope you'll be able to use that as a tip. If you walk away with anything today, walk away with that. All right. So how to spot a scam? There's some visual indicators, but the problem is you can't trust your eyes when it comes to links. Any link that you see in WhatsApp or in an email, it doesn't have to say it's going to take you. There is no correlation between those two. So you cannot trust a link or a button at all. And we're going to look at a couple of examples like that. Here's one, for instance. They've initiated contact. It's urgent. We need you to do something. We need you to cancel this request immediately, which seems great. I'm not doing anything. I'm canceling the request. But if you look at that link, for instance, there's a little hand over it. It's hovering over it, and it actually is pointing to a different. You've got no idea where that link is going to take you. This email cannot be trusted at all. Here's another one that came from a bank. Again, asking you to sign in. The link seems legit, bank.com. That's their real address, except that's not where that link is taking you. Cannot trust your eyes when it comes to links. Here's a local one, and Absa's not the only one that's targeted with this. All the banks go through this. Very often is the one that says, oh, we've detected a hack on your account, and you now need to prevent this hack. We just need you to click this link. Not trust links in emails at all. You can spot a couple of things like grammar and writing ability and a couple of spelling mistakes, but I have to tell you that the scams are getting better. And even language-wise, they are spreading out into various languages, not everything in English anymore. And all of that is to gain more trust from you to be able to take that action. Here's a quick email that I want to show you. This is actually just a fun example showing you what the problem is. You see those red arrows? I'm just going to hide this. This is what you see when you get the email. It's an email from your boss man at Domain 1, which is your company. And it says, you're a great employee. I've decided to give you a raise. In this case, we're Dude 1. We've received this email from boss man. Everything seems legit. The problem is that is not what's happening. This email actually came from Dude 2 at Domain 2, a completely different domain. And when you hit reply, it's going to send the email back to him. So even though you thought you were getting an email from inside your organization, The email actually came from outside your organization. This is known as email spoofing, for instance, and it just shows you one of the ways that you need to be very, very careful with email. I can make email appear to come from anybody, right? You cannot verify it. And there's a lot of technology that can be put in place to prevent this, but I want you to be awake and be aware of the fact that don't just trust it because you are looking at the from email address and you think you're going to respond to the correct person. We need to be awake for this type of thing. This can very easily in emails. Right. Let's move on to a couple of other things. Just talking about links, URLs. What I want to mention with regards to links and URL, I need you to read a URL. I'm just going to run through this quickly, just a little bit of an overview. If you haven't learned how a URL works before, a URL points to something on the internet. It has a couple of different parts. Now, the key I'm going to give you on this part is I want you to start reading URLs from right to left. Instead of reading them from left to right, read them from right to left. The red block at the end there is known as the top level domain. There are hundreds of them. Unfortunately, I can't go for now. I mean, you know, a couple of common ones, .co.za, .com, .gov.za. So those are top level domains. So if I take the top level, the next part that comes to the left of it, that comes after it, is the name of the domain. Okay, that name can be anything. Right in front of that, which is the green block, is the subdomain. There can be one, there can be two, there can be many subdomains next to each other, and they can be anything. And you'll see why that's in a second. Here's another example, example.com, domain and top level domain. There's another one, webhostinginsights.com. So if we read it from the right, we see we've got top level domain and then our domain name and our subdomain at the front. So why is this important? Oh, there's one for the Australian government, for instance. This is what it looks like in your browser. If you check your browser top left and it has an address in there, you'll see it looks like that. That's how you can use the link. Here's why it's why it's important. This is a scam went around a couple of years ago on WhatsApp, where they said Pick n Pay was giving away a free voucher, and everything looks legit. They've got the company logo in there. It says www.pnp.co.za at the top, but if you read at the bottom, www.pnp.com free coupon, you know, it doesn't really catch your attention the first time. But if you read it from the right to left, you'll see it actually says .com, which is our top level domain. And then before that, our domain name is com-free coupon. And the subdomain before that is PNP. And before that is www. So what these guys have done is they've gone and created a domain called com-free coupon. And they made the subdomain PNP. So when you read it quickly, it looks like it says www.picknpay.pnp.com. But it's not that domain at all. Now, why in the world would Pick n Pay run a free coupon campaign not on their own domain? So the moment you see that domain name, you immediately know this is a scam. Okay, this is another example. It must have been the same group because it's the same type of thing. Again, there the domain name is actually com-sa.com. Okay, so they put R1500 as the subdomain. You read it quickly and you think, oh, well, that seems legit. You have to learn to be able to read URLs if you want to be able to spot scam. Here's another one I saw just on the cell phone. I thought what was cool about this, just look at the branding. They've put so much effort into this coupon looking real, but you'll see there that it says r1500.com-sa.com. That is not Pick n Pay's domain. And it says not secure. It's not even using the green padlock. So skip that. Just know immediately that that is going to be a scam. All right. So I hope this will help you just to be able to read URLs a little bit better. I will trust you, teach you to trust emails as much. Be very careful with links you don't know where they go. The last one I'm going to talk to you about, we have about 5 minutes left, is going to be your website. Obviously, my area of expertise, something that I spend a lot of time with. We specialize in cleaning hacked WordPress websites. It's one of the things we do, and we prevent it from happening again. So your website hack has got two issues now. It used to be one issue. It used to be that it used to affect your business. So either they would steal data or negatively impact the appearance from the outside world. It would, obviously, your website would be down, affecting operations. But now with POPI, we've got the additional complication that if your website gets hacked, it could leak customer information. And that now holds much more severe punishment than in the past, where it was just sort of a business consequence. Now there's also a legislative consequence. So we do need to look at why exactly is it important for us to make sure that our website stays safe and secure. sorry, I'm going to use the analogy of a regular shop. If you have a regular shop that you've opened up, brick and mortar shop on the street, you guys want to throw some examples in chat. What do you think are some of the things that you need to have in place to make sure that that business is safe and secure? What are some of the things that you think you need to have in place? You can just throw some stuff in the chat. It's fine. What do you think we need? No one wants to venture a guess? An alarm, yes. Security, good. We need to have an alarm, absolutely. We need to have security in place. CCTV, right? A couple of examples coming through. Great stuff. So let's list those. Let's put those up into categories. Right. So looking at some of our categories that we've got here, we've got appearance of the shop. So if you think about, is the shop clean? Is there trash lying around? Are the signs torn? Are the windows dirty? What's the experience like when someone walks in there? Are they having a good customer experience? Is the staff well trained? Or is it easy for them to buy what they need? And then, of course, security, not just keeping your clients safe while they're shopping, keeping your employees safe, and then your assets are safe inside that business. Now, that makes sense to us when we think about a brick and mortar shop. How does that work when we are speaking about how does that relate? Well, you have to remember that your website is like just thousands of puzzle pieces. Every piece of code is like a puzzle piece. Different people all over the world. They didn't necessarily speak to each other. They didn't build this together. Then it gets grouped into clusters of code by other people, and everybody is just responsible for. And what happens is that when a security issue is detected in one of these little puzzle pieces, they will fix it and they will let the other people know, say, hey, I fixed my piece, and that has used that piece will update the code. And that update is exactly, for instance, what your cell phone does when it updates apps at night, what your Windows does when it Windows. It is getting the newest version of the code, and a lot of that is bug fixes and security updates. So with regards to your website, if you are couple of things for your website. These are the things I would advise you to do. Make sure that your software is up to date. If you're running any type of CMS system, it's even more important. If you are responsible for your website, or you know that there's someone in your organization responsible for your website, make sure that they are keeping the website up to date. Okay? Have security in place. So not just up to date, just like you would have for your regular shop, have security in place to make sure that it is difficult for hackers to gain access. Treat customer data like money, like we said before. Ask critical questions. What data are we storing? Why are we storing it? Where are we storing it? How are we storing it? You might drive your IT department crazy or your service provider crazy, but it's important questions to ask because it's your responsibility. And then also have a privacy policy, so that you can communicate everything that you're doing to your customer. A couple of small tips to end off with. Make sure that you are serving your website in HTTPS. That also ensures the safe communication between the client and your website. And then a couple of other things is, if you if you have questions or you need advice about this, reach out to service providers and make sure. But remember that ultimately you are responsible for your website, much like you are responsible for your own shop. A lot of times when clients come to us with a hacked website, they thought that the hosting provider was responsible for their website, or the marketer was responsible, or the web developer that built it 2 years ago. But the reality is that if it's your website, you are responsible for it. And so if there's a data breach, we're going to knock on your door. If the website gets hacked, we're going to ask you about it. So it really is a matter of realizing that this is my responsibility and then taking the appropriate action. And we're all here to support you. We all want you to have a successful business and run a great website. No one wants to see anybody get hacked. That's a real passion of mine to combat. I would love to be a crime fighter, but I'm just a coder. So I would love to see websites being so safe and secure that it becomes difficult for criminals to get to them, and to bring those enterprise level solutions to SMMEs across South Africa. Yeah, so that's it from my side. I hope you found this informative. I hope that there'll be a couple of keys in there that you can take going forward. If you have any questions, please shout. Thanks. Liesel, you are muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Willem, for that information. We really enjoyed your session. If you guys have any questions for Willem, please ask them in the chat. We will get to the question and answer section shortly. I'm just going to share a little bit to a short presentation with you quickly. It won't take too long. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to get, okay. Okay, so one of the conditions of the POPI Act that Temba shared with us, as well as some of the information that Willem has shared with us, is security safeguards. Now, this condition can be quite daunting, if not overwhelming, if you consider, you know, the POPI Act, especially since it extends to the actions of your staff and foreseeable events such as theft. These conditions requirements can be broken into the following parts, and that is people, process, technology, service providers, software as a service, and public and private cloud. Now, I want to quickly just focus on safeguarding data against people. Now, the requirement around safeguarding of data probably has the biggest and most challenging implications for businesses. You need to ensure that your employees realize and understand the importance of protecting other people's personal information. Putting the most advanced and expensive systems and controls in place will not protect personal information if people involved, for example, your employees, are negligent or ignorant in protecting personal information. There is only so much you and your IT department can monitor and control with technology. It still relies heavily on the people and your employees to consider whether what they are doing is legal or not, or whether they can identify cyber attacks like phishing emails and scams that Willem and Temba has shared with us. Ensuring employee awareness is crucial when it comes to data protection. Training employees on how to handle personal information and secure any breaches is essential, especially since so many of them may be working in environments outside of the organization which may not be secure. The POPI Act requires all organizations in South Africa to protect personal information of customers and clients. If a cyber criminal steals data from your business and a judge rules that you didn't have the right precautions in place to prevent it from happening, your business will be liable for the damages. This puts the responsibility of protecting data into the hands of your business and your employees. To protect organizations from liability, end users must know what they need to do to protect personal information and how they can put it into practice. To ensure your end users are on board with doing their best to protect your organization, you should keep training engaging, to the point, and full of actionable steps, goals for your end users to meet. So effective POPI training and cybersecurity training will make your users aware of your organization's legal obligation to protect personal information. It should warn users about the potential penalties of failing to protect personal information, from fines and jail time to loss of trust from your customers and your company's reputation. You also need to educate users on all core security areas, from password hygiene and email security to the responsible use of a removable device and how to identify different cyber attacks. If your employee does not know what malware is, what social engineering is, then it will be very difficult for them to identify an attack. You need to make training short and continuous and keep it engaging, and remind your users year-round of their responsibilities. The sad reality is that cybersecurity is an afterthought to most members of staff. While almost everyone knows the importance of password, security is often put on the side when work pressures or deadlines mount up. To prevent this from happening, you will need to build a security culture where all your end users and all your employees know and respect the importance of security. With Upskill Academy's regular bite-sized and engaging training, you can ensure that end users are reminded of their responsibilities on an ongoing basis, as well as receiving information and reminders on how to put security into practice in their day-to-day work life. This should form the core of a security-minded culture, where security is part of your daily work life and not just an afterthought, as it is for a lot of people and a lot of companies. Okay. That is the end of my presentation. I'm just going to move over, Temba, if you can just unmute yourself as well. We have received a couple of questions, and I'm going to ask Temba if you can answer some of them. Willem, if you know the answer, you're also welcome to answer some of them. The first one is directed at Temba. If you hire a lawyer or an attorney to get you compliant, does the responsibility, if they do decide, so if the information regulator decides that that company is not compliant, does the responsibility then fall on the attorney that did the implementation of POPI or on the actual client?
Thank you for the question, Lizelle.
It's a pleasure.
I'd like us to remember that if I go and get a service provider, that service provider is providing a service for me. Now, the regulator itself is looking at the responsible party as the organization. Whoever you get to come and do your compliance and make sure you have compliance documents, leaves those with you. It is your responsibility to verify, in fact, whatever you have is correct by maybe using another external party to verify what the other external party did. But the responsibility still comes back to the information officer. I don't know if I was able to capture in an essence. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Temba. Okay, then
can I just mention something? I think the information regulator has also published, a decent amount of information as to what the responsibilities of the information officer is. And I think if you just use that as a checklist, if you've, asked a lawyer to come in and do certain things, use that as a checklist to then go, hey, have you actually addressed these concerns? So in the very least, if there is an issue, when the information regulator comes to the information officer and says, hey, what have you done? You can go, well, this is the actions that I have taken. And perhaps there might be a shortfall there, but at least you would be able to answer that and say, hey, I have done this. There was a failure on the part of the service provider, but this is how I checked it. And that at least opens up a conversation versus saying, I just passed the ball to someone else.
Yes. I will also just add on to that you must be careful and very do a lot of research when you are implementing POPI, and be careful of the service provider that you use. I know a lot of companies that I deal with that purchase training from us. They have dealt with actual people or service providers that have told them, oh no, the only thing you need to do is get a privacy policy and then you're safe. It's so much more than that. It's not just in implementing a privacy policy or a cookie notification on your website. Implementing POPI is really, there's a lot of information that goes into it. So like Willem said, get the information on the information regulator, get those guidance notes, make sure that you choose a service provider that will assist you completely, but verify everything that they do.
To add to what Lizelle just said, guidance notes. They are available on the regulator's website. You can take a look at those.
Yes. Okay. Then the next question is for you as well, Temba. Is the information regulator geared up to tackle any non-compliance?
Thank you, Lizelle. Look, as a new organization, we've had to build systems from scratch to be able to fulfill whatever our responsibilities are in terms of the regulator. terms of the act and what is prescribed for us to do. So I would like to say we've done very hard work, and we are at a position we feel that we are starting to be capacitated in actually taking on non-compliance. We have an enforcement committee that is up and running now, so we should start to see action pretty soon. And we'd encourage people to register their complaints with the regulator, and we'll take it as we go. I think this is a project in progress, and I don't think we'll ever get to a point where we know everything as a regulator, and we'll just need to keep going and making sure that we put in place whatever is still lacking, but we are ready as a regulator to take on what comes our way.
Okay. We did have some questions that was submitted. What is POPI? What is cybersecurity? I'm not going to ask those questions again because I feel that Temba and Willem has really extensively answered that those type of questions. The next question I want to ask you, Temba, is that has been asked is, will the information regulator issue annual reports on the number of complaints received and possibly the outcome on each?
Look, for now, as part of IT analysis, I like to refer how that process will go to the relevant divisions with POPI and PIA. But I would say that we have in place systems to register all sorts of complaints, and it is possible to make those available. Of course, complaints are registered by data subjects, and we need to take care to say whatever we choose to make available will also take into account personal information that is included in those complaints. So we can't just give a response to say this, we can make all that available. We would have to make information available in a way that is tasteful and adheres to what we ourselves are trying to guard against.
Yes. Okay, then I'm going to, there's just 2 more questions on the registration, and then we can move over to the questions in the chat box. The one question is, if you can prove as a company you have provided training and there is a breach with the regulator, after you've provided the training, there is a breach or a hack, will the regulator be more lenient to companies that has done all the training and the implementation?
Thank you for the question, Lisa. I think on this one, we have to remember that cybersecurity awareness training is an ongoing process. You have to show that I do cybersecurity awareness training. How often do you do it? Because the threat landscape changes all the time. So if I'm able to say, yes, you did the training, but this through threat intelligence vulnerability came up like a year ago, and you say your training was done 18 months back, there is too much of a gap. So, best practice in a lot of places is quarterly training at the minimum. Quarterly training, that means 4 times a year. And I would regard that now as saying, yes, I'm doing the ongoing training on my staff.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Obviously, we take every case on merit and as it comes, and we would have to look at that specific case and see when that training may have been conducted. So I think I'll end it there.
Okay. So the last question that we have is, how often do you need to upskill and train your employees? I think Temba has answered from his side. From my side, I can tell you that, I really think that it depends on the number of staff you have and on the size of the company. But I agree with Temba, for most of the companies that we deal with, we do the training on a quarterly basis. So I also do think that, and you can spread it out. And what we've done for some of our clients is actually take our cybersecurity awareness course and do one of the modules which focuses on a specific topic every quarter, so that it doesn't disrupt business. But I do agree with you as well. Quarterly, I think, is your best option, not only in cybersecurity but also in POPI, and making people constantly aware of their actual responsibility for protecting information. Okay, then we have a question on the chat box from Richard. Is the use of biometrics for credential purposes not the safest form of authentication? Perhaps, Willem, you can help with that one.
Yeah, sure. I was just thinking about that. Obviously, when we spoke today, I had all those little bubbles up. So obviously what you're talking about now falls firmly within the IT infrastructure. So if you're talking about biometrics for credential purposes, then we're talking about physical access to server rooms or devices or office spaces. And that, I think, biometrics, by and large, regardless of what you might see in Hollywood, biometrics is probably a very effective way of controlling physical access to those spaces, which is great if it is implemented well and if it's managed well. You can't just put a system in and leave it, and then after an incident discover that, oh, there were no logs or no one was managing the system properly. So I think if it's implemented well, biometrics, great form of doing physical access. But then remember that physical access is only one piece of the puzzle in the bigger picture of IT infrastructure. And even then, IT infrastructure will just be one part of the entire picture. We've been talking about people training, for instance, here a lot today. So I think it forms part of the mesh. So I hope that answers it to some extent, Richard.
Thank you, Willem. Themba, is there anything you want to add to it, or?
I think Willem captured it very well. So no.
Okay. Okay, then we've got from Naouf, we've got a question. What is the most important topics for cybersecurity awareness for the employees? Any one of you want to take that one?
Just say that again. What's the most important topics?
What's the most important topics for cybersecurity awareness for the employees?
All of them.
Yes. Well, if I can just say or relate to our training, what we do is we focus not just on what cybersecurity is, but in our training, we go into in-depth detail of what is malware, the different type of malware attacks that you have available, what is phishing, how to identify phishing emails, how to identify the links that, that some of the things that Willem has discussed, what is social engineering, what is, so what is whaling is also quite a big thing as well. What is whaling? So, to typically go into each and every single topic on that and really break it down, not just what it is, but what it is, what are the different types of those threats available, or out there. And it has to be up to date. You have to constantly update that training because there's new types of attacks every single month, I think. And then also how to identify it. And if you do notice something as an employee, how do you deal with it? What do you do? If you notice it, do you forward that email to your IT department? Do you pick up the phone and phone the IT department? What kind of processes do you follow once you notice a cyber attack? So I think you really need to go in depth with your cybersecurity, not just do an overall, this is what cybersecurity is and this is what phishing is, but a real in-depth training of each one of those topics.
Yeah, I think if I can just jump in there, I think what sometimes happens is that hacking has become such a sort of a popularized term. We see it in Hollywood shows all the time, and we get the idea of hacking. We think it's some guy sitting in a room breaking into computer systems. And how does it affect me? What am I supposed to do about it? I just answer the phone, or I just, capture data. I think what's really important, all of this, is to push away that fictionalized idea of hacking, and then to say, what are the parts of the business that I actually carry responsibility for, and what are the risks associated with that? And then if you are made aware of that, hey, you might only have access to everybody's address book in the company, but that becomes a problem if you leave that unattended at your desk and walk out to go call someone, and there's a potential delivery guy standing in the foyer. The moment you're made aware of that, you begin to see, oh wow, this is a risk. I never realized that could be classified as that's a social engineering attack, perhaps, or it's sort of hacking. So I think it's good for people to see practically where does it affect them and what are the practical things they can do. So if they know, if I'm checking these 5 things, I'm following these procedures. When I receive an invoice from a company, this is what I do. When I receive this kind of request, this is what I do. They can actually combat hacking in a very practical way. So I think that's what's to understand their part in the bigger picture.
Yes.
And I think to add to what Willem has just said, even the landscape itself has evolved so much, and now someone who with practically zero IT skills can, because they can just get a ransomware as a service or buy a hacker off the dark internet to do all their hacking for them, and in exchange for profit, everyone, well, I can't use that word, but it's gone very bad. Thank you.
Okay. Then we've got another question from Leon. Hi all, what are your thoughts on encryption on your device as a protection method? Would you say it's a requirement for POPI?
And encryption is very important because without it, you're basically throwing caution to the wind. I think it's called flapping in the breeze, because now all your data is stored in a way that is humanly readable and anyone can go for it. It also means that confidentiality is not achieved, which is one of the things that you are putting safeguards in place to ensure for the data subject. So I would say encryption is very important in terms of the controls to put in place.
Yeah, what makes it tricky, that's absolutely true what Themba is saying. I think what makes it tricky is that we're no longer dealing with monolithic systems. It's not just a computer that's on the desk. It's not 1990 and there's a computer on a desk and it's isolated by itself. If we look at how many devices we have, IoT devices, we have phones, and because of accounts and online platforms, all of these things have become very meshed. So where exactly is the line between personal and company? And, it's become very blurry. So I think what's important is to ask yourself critical questions. And along with that, encryption isn't necessarily as ubiquitous as we want it to be. Now with the Internet of Things, that would be like your Google Home devices and all these devices that's turning off your home and home automation. So a lot of those don't have encryption yet. Things like email encryption is still incredibly difficult to achieve. Not everybody's device that they're working on has built-in encryption that if someone tries to access that hard drive, if they yank the hard drive out and put it in another machine, it's not automatically encrypted. I think Apple introduced that a while ago for some of their devices, but it's not as easily and as readily available. So my advice would be to say, identify in your organization where you're going to store the data, make sure those locations are definitely encrypted. So if you are storing data and make that the IT department's thing and say, okay, you're responsible, make sure that all of this data is encrypted. Make sure that it's encrypted in the communication channels. So when it's traveling from those store locations, and then try to not have the data on other places. So don't have user data just leaking out and, a copy of an ID on your laptop, for instance, because you are complicating the thing. Now you have to encrypt your laptop and you're actually making the problem. So I would say part of the solution to identify the places where we're going to store data and make sure those are encrypted and in the communication channels. And then as a company policy, to say you may not have company data on your personal cell phone, for instance. So then you don't have to solve it with technology and all kinds of systems and monitoring. Draw those borders in your business as to where the information is allowed to be and make sure that it aren't in any of the other spaces. That would be my advice for that as well.
Thank you, Willem. Any other questions? Does any of our attendees have any other questions? Leon said thank you for the answers. I see some of the attendees also answered the question in the chat box. Any other questions? Just going to give it a couple of seconds more.
I just want to say we're all really, really tough. We did this in the middle of load shedding. Well done, everybody. Investing
Yes,
into your business. Well done. Thanks, Liesl.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, I think a lot of people emailed me just before the session to say that they're only going to be able to join certain sections because of load shedding. But yes, just to say again, while we'll see if there's any other questions, we have recorded the session. After the session, we will load the actual video onto our YouTube channel, and I will send an email out with Willem's details, as well as the link to replay the video if you would like to watch it again. I've got here, I have to caution that when you come from organizations, and just want to read a comment here, I have to caution that when you come from organizations with massive IT budgets, things like encryption seems like easy solutions. Admittedly, it's speaking from a place of privilege, when in actual fact they might not be, and this is valuable to the point that Willem has raised. Thank you, Nonkuleko, for that comment. I don't think we have any other questions. If there is anything else, you're welcome to contact us at the, after the webinar if you need any information from Willem perhaps, or any information about our training, you're more than welcome to contact us. Themba, I did have a couple of people, and Willem, I also had a couple of people asking if you would be so kind as to share your slides with me so that I can pass that on to them. If you can just let me know afterwards if that is something that you can do, and then I will share that information with the attendees as well. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And thank you, Willem, again, and Themba. It was really great information and a great session. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Liesl, for being the regulator.
It's a pleasure. Okay. That's it. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy load shedding further. Thank you. Bye-bye.